Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. In this video, I'm going to take another look at New York Times projections that Michigan is headed towards a very hot future. The New York Times has this website, How Much Hotter Is Your Hometown Than When You Were Born? I'm going to enter Detroit, Michigan in 1920. This is what comes up. Our data set goes back to 1960 when you were 40. Back then, the Detroit area could expect about 9 days per year to reach at least 90 degrees. Then they go on to say, today the Detroit, Michigan area can expect 9 days at or above 90 degrees per year on average, which is the same number they gave for 60 years ago. And they finish up with, by the end of the century, models show that there could be 30 of these very hot days. The likely range is between 14 and 44. So let's talk about what a model is. A model is a mathematical representation of what somebody believes. The person who made the model apparently believes that increases in atmospheric carbon dioxide are going to lead to more 90-degree days in Detroit. If their assumption is incorrect, their model will be incorrect as well. What they're trying to do is use this model as evidence for their belief system about global warming. But that's all that the model is a representation of their belief system. Their argument is that a representation of their beliefs confirms their beliefs. This is circular logic, and it has no basis in science or logical thinking. In order to confirm their model, they would have to verify it against empirical data. In order to do that, you would have to look at the actual data for Michigan and compare it against their model. So let's take a look at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's State Climate Summary for Michigan. They show that the number of 90-degree days in Michigan is sharply down since the 1930s. And they show that the observed number of very warm nights in Michigan hasn't changed over the last 120 years, with the warmest nights again occurring during the 1930s. This is NOAA's key message for Michigan. Temperatures in Michigan have risen almost 3 degrees Fahrenheit since the beginning of the 20th century. Historically unprecedented warming is projected during this century. Let's look at this sentence again. Historically unprecedented warming is projected during this century. So once again, they're projecting warming based on a model of their belief system. And once again, there's no evidence that their model is correct. NOAA claims that Michigan has warmed 3 degrees over the last century. Let's take a look at the basis for that claim. The red line in this graph shows NOAA's actual measured temperature data for Michigan. It shows no warming and perhaps some cooling over the past century. But NOAA doesn't use measured temperature data. They alter the data before they make statements about it. Their adjusted data is shown in purple. It shows a strong warming trend which does not exist in the actual thermometer data. This graph shows the alterations which NOAA is making to the actual thermometer data. What they're doing is cooling past temperatures in Michigan by about 3 degrees and then claiming there's a 3-degree warming trend which doesn't exist in the actual thermometer data. The claimed 3 degrees of warming is due entirely to NOAA's data tampering. Now let's take a look specifically at heat waves. These graphs are from the National Climate Assessment. The National Climate Assessment shows that heat waves in the United States were much worse prior to the year 1960. And they show that peak temperatures in Michigan were much lower prior to 1960 as well. This graph shows the complete data set for Michigan in red. The percent of days above 90 degrees Fahrenheit in Michigan was much higher prior to the year 1960 than it has been over the past 60 years. This makes it very clear why the New York Times hid all of the data prior to 1960. There's been a sharp decrease in the number of 90-degree days in Michigan as atmospheric carbon dioxide has increased. The thermometer data set shows no correlation between atmospheric carbon dioxide and the number of 90-degree days. In fact, it shows the exact opposite. As atmospheric carbon dioxide levels have increased, the number of 90-degree days in Michigan has sharply decreased. These claims from the New York Times are based on hiding the inconvenient data prior to 1960. And they're based on models which don't correlate with empirical evidence from the past. NOAA's claims about Michigan are even worse. They claim that temperatures in Michigan have risen almost 3 degrees since the beginning of the 20th century. But that claim isn't true. The 3 degrees came from them tampering with their own data set. And their projections of unprecedented warming in the future are not supported by any legitimate evidence. These projections being made by the New York Times and NOAA about Michigan temperatures have nothing to do with science. All they are is propaganda. Toto's been pulling back the curtain on this massive deception and fraud for the past 14 years. You can visit him, Kyrie Caesar, Toki, and Upala on the web at realclimatescience.com.